First time that I ever heard the term toxic positivity, my initial thought was, that's not possible. Positivity can't be toxic. And that's toxic positivity. So I like to think of myself as a pretty optimistic person. I try to find the good in every situation. And I think that a lot of that comes from having a broad perspective on life. And I mean that like in a non-pretentious way. I'm just saying that, I'm spiritually, emotionally, and mentally in tune with myself. And because of that, I'm able to see the bigger picture in a lot of situations. So I no longer have to like force myself to be positive. It's natural. Now, obviously, having a positive mindset is, very beneficial to you, especially on the pursuit of your goals. I have very big dreams, especially in regards to YouTube. And, I want to be able to make this a career for myself. And I want to live, a certain type of lifestyle. And so, having that positive mindset is very important. But what's even more important is that that positivity is genuine. It's true positivity. It's not just a facade. That's what toxic positivity is. It's a facade. I'm sure most of you have heard the term fake it till you make it. That's pretty much what toxic positivity is. It's the idea of telling yourself that you're positive and trying to reaffirm it to yourself without confronting the negativity that exists within you first. Think of it like when you have a lot of text messages. Let's just say that you have 1,000 unread messages on your phone and you have the notifications there. You can clear the notifications off so that it looks like you don't have a lot of messages, but those messages are still there. They're still unread. So, if you're leaving them there, it's still going to be on the back of your mind that you have 1,000 messages that you haven't read yet, even if the notification's not there. And so in order to really feel authentic clarity, you have to read those messages. You have to go through those messages. And it does kind of suck. It sucks. But doing that is the only way to find authentic positivity. Positivity that lies within the subconscious and the conscious mind. Just like I say in all of my law of attraction videos, it's all about the subconscious. 95% of the actions that you take are influenced by your subconscious mind. The thoughts that you don't see. Now, my introduction to toxic positivity began, I would say, with social media. It's like I felt like I had to be positive all the time just to put on a front for social media. Because if you put negative energy out on social media, people aren't going to give you that unconditional love that you're seeking outside of yourself, that you should be seeking from within. And, I can't speak from the perspective of women, but I can say that as a man, the stigma of having to suppress your emotions, that is a big part of toxic positivity. And it's something that people need to talk about more. Men need to learn to embrace their emotions more, so that the suicide rates will go down and so that we can have more productivity overall and so that we can empathize with other men and women and everything in between more. Now, like I said, social media is kind of what like introduced me to it unknowingly. But I would say the next thing that really like pushed me off of a cliff into toxic positivity was when I started reading this book about the law of attraction. Now, mind you, before I read this book, I didn't really know, how the law of attraction worked. So, I misinterpreted the information in the book. That was my fault. Basically, in the book, and it's called The Last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read. It's a very, very good book, especially if you don't know anything about the law of attraction. It's a good starting point. But in the book, the basic idea is to find gratitude in your life and to feel good as much as possible, to put yourself on a higher frequency, the frequency that will match the outcome that you desire. Now, when I first read this, of course, my initial thought was, okay, I need to be positive all the time, no matter what. And so that's what I started doing. I had this like surface level positivity, but in the background of my mind, there were these negative thought cycles going on all the time. And they weren't being addressed because I was just ignoring them. I was trying to do the whole fake it till you make it thing to make myself believe that I was positive. Obviously, this wasn't sustainable. And I would say that things really started to get bad after this situation with this girl. And I've talked about this so much, especially in What Heartbreak Taught Me, if you want to check that video out. If you haven't watched that video, I'm just going to give you a quick briefing. So basically, I met this girl and we hit it off really, really well. Like, it was like an instant connection. And, at the time, I was going through a lot mentally. I was depressed. I was just questioning everything. And she came into my life at like that time when I just needed somebody. And she was that somebody. She was that spark of light in the darkest of rooms. And I developed like a dependency on her for my happiness. So as you can imagine, when we stopped talking, and this was basically like an overnight thing, like she was just no longer in my life. When we stopped talking, like, man, I was going through it, like mentally, I was going through it. Now, before that, I didn't think of myself as an emotional person. I wasn't the type to cry or do any of that. I might get upset sometimes, but in terms of like getting sad, I never liked to show my sadness, even to myself. But this situation, this was like the breaking point. And I'm so thankful that it happened because it kind of unleashed all of this built up trauma that I had, especially trauma related to girls. Now, I had all of these negative thoughts going on in my mind while I was trying to like maintain this facade of positivity. And this was like during quarantine. This all happened like right as quarantine started. So I had no choice but to sit there and reflect on everything that had happened. And, I couldn't run away from my feelings or my thoughts. And I tried to kind of mask it with my work, just doing YouTube. But I remember my sister recommended this book to me. It's called Learning to Love Yourself. And basically, the book tells you to embrace all of who you are, even the bad parts, even the ugly parts that you can't embrace. Learning to love yourself unconditionally. And I remember I started to get into poetry as a way to kind of express myself, but I refused to write anything bad about the situation. Like, I refused to write any sad poems, basically. It was all like, positive, like, I'm thankful that this happened and all that. And like, obviously I've reached that point now, but it's like, at the time I hadn't reached that point yet. And I was like trying to skip steps in the grieving process. It's kind of like when you get a cut and you have to pour alcohol on it. It's going to hurt really bad, but in the long run, it's going to help you a lot because you're preventing infections and, you're keeping yourself healthy in the long run. But me, instead of putting alcohol on it, I was just letting it sit there. And I was doing everything that I could to avoid it. I was writing all these positive poems. And I remember one day I was driving and I must have been listening to some sad music or something. And I just broke down. Like, I mean, broke down. Ugly crying in the car. And before that, like I said, I didn't think of myself as an emotional person. In fact, I think I only cried like one time in like the past 5 years before that, just to like put it into perspective that I'm not, or at least I thought I wasn't, a very emotional person. And since then, I've cried like 6 times in like the past few months. I'm an emotional person and I'm starting to realize that about myself. And I'm learning to embrace all of who I am. And that's where, To My First Love and What Heartbreak Taught Me, that's why I made those videos. That was part of my healing process. I needed to make those videos. I needed to talk about it. I needed to externalize my feelings. And in doing that, I was able to bring the last of those negative feelings and thoughts to the light and examine them and, feel them thoroughly and make some money in the process. But in doing that, it kind of allowed me to really find a true, authentic positivity. Going through all of the trauma of my past that I hadn't dealt with, stuff that I had just suppressed and told myself, it's not that big of a deal, just keep it moving. Like, no, sometimes you need to really embrace your feelings. And I feel like that's where the idea of stoicism can especially be very, very toxic. If it's not genuine, if you just like tell yourself that you need to stay strong, like sometimes you need to be weak to be strong again. Like, for example, when you build your body up, when you're lifting weights, you're breaking your muscle fibers down so that you can rebuild them. They can grow back stronger. you need to learn to do that with your emotions as well. And you need to learn to read through those messages and cry, like literally cry, express your emotions. I remember after that first time I broke down, I was so like confused. Part of the reason why I was confused was because I had cried and I was, sitting here thinking I wasn't an emotional person. And another part of the reason was I felt a lot better after doing so. I felt a lot better after I cried. After that, I literally made it a thing for myself. Like, when you see on Twitter people talking about, I need to have a good cry right now, I always thought that like they were joking. But after that, I literally, if I felt any bit of sadness in me from that situation, I would go out and make myself cry. Like I would drive to a secluded location, I'd park my car, and I'd sit there and listen to sad music until I cried. And it sucked. It really sucked. But after like 3 or 4 times of doing that, I was good. It got to the point where I couldn't cry anymore. I had no more tears left. And that meant that I had read all of those messages. My inbox was empty. And now I have a genuine positivity, a genuine appreciation for the way that things happened, because everything that has happened has led me up to this moment. And it's like I knew that even when the situation was happening, I knew that like, everything happens for a reason. I knew that in my mind, but I needed to let myself feel the loss and feel the grief to allow myself to feel the abundance again. Because you can't feel true abundance if you have these thought cycles of loss going on in the back of your mind. You need to read these messages. The whole idea of faking it until you make it is not going to get you anywhere, because at some point you're going to break down. That whole fake it till you make it thing, that caused me a lot of anxiety. I had never had anxiety in my life before that. And it's like, even if you're able to see the bigger picture from the start, you can't truly see the bigger picture. You know that there's more out there, but you won't know what that is until you go through those feelings that you need to go through and you develop that self-awareness. Self-awareness is everything. That is the key to positivity. That's how you see the bigger picture. And it comes from embracing all parts of yourself. You can't be self-aware if you're not embracing the negative aspects of yourself and the trauma that you have within you that you don't want to look at. And that's why like whenever I make videos where I'm vulnerable and I get comments saying like, man, why are you being so feminine? Why are you simping? Like all this type of stuff. It really like, those comments make me feel bad for the person writing them, because it's like they're projecting their insecurities onto me. They haven't learned to embrace all the aspects of themselves, because everyone has that vulnerable side of them. It's just not everyone has the courage to share that side of them. YouTube is like my therapy. You guys are getting the raw transparency of Jordan Green. Like, you are getting a look inside of me, into my soul. But I wouldn't be able to make these types of videos if I didn't have the self-awareness, if I wasn't willing to embrace all the aspects of myself. So if there's anything that I want you to take away from this video, it's embrace all aspects of yourself. That's how you develop self-awareness. That's how you clear that trauma from your subconscious. And that's how you develop true, authentic clarity and positivity that allows you to see the bigger picture. Allow yourself to feel what you need to feel, but make sure that what you're feeling is real.